Hey everybody! I'd like to welcome a guest of mine. I got Ryan Naylor with me to this episode of the Advisory Board podcast. Ryan's the founder CEO of VIVA HR. They've been in business about 4 years. Ryan's an expert in staffing and HR. How do we get more bodies to do more work in a business? So I think you're going to like the topic today. VIVA HR has been around for 4 years, as I mentioned, and they're a software platform that's designed for small to medium businesses, where a lot of hiring platforms are too huge in scale and too complex and too expensive. Ryan's built, a little bit like Client Tether, in that it's designed for you guys. And he's familiar with the franchising industry as well. Just came back from a show there. So Ryan, tell us a little bit more about you before we jump into the topic.
Hey, thanks for having me. So my background has been in HR technology and automation for about 14 years or so. And my background is we built a job board in Arizona called Local Work and had a lot of fun with it, just growing it, building it, being part of the community, helping people find jobs. Helped about 100,000 people get jobs through our platform just in Arizona alone. So we had a pretty sizable market share. And we saw a lot of glaring mistakes that small businesses made. And that's ultimately where Viva HR came from, is we wanted to build a platform specifically for small businesses to help them kind of overcome some of those hiring hurdles that they typically face. And to your point, there's a lot of big enterprise solutions, but small businesses just didn't have their hands on it. So we wanted to build something for them.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's guys. Let's talk about the topic for the day, and you'll see exactly why Ryan's in this with me today. So there are a few issues that are facing a lot of the folks. I just came back from a conference this weekend in DC. Janitorial services, staffing is a problem. Painters, staffing is the number one problem. Home residential cleaning, roofers, carpet cleaners, window people. Like, everybody has the same problem right now, which is I can't get enough of the right people to come and work for me. So what we want to talk about today is, labor shortages, maybe what's behind this thing. How can a forward-thinking business owner get ahead of it? We're going to talk about this topic and beat it up a little bit. And I'm going to let Ryan do most of the talking, since he's the real expert here. All I can do is frame the issue and say, we have labor shortages in every single sector in the country right now. And how do we get creative to make sure that we're staffing with the right people? I'll share some insights I've learned from some of my clients about how they're doing it too, but we're going to mainly listen to Ryan share a little bit of details about that. So hopefully you guys find this topic to be of use, and I would be shocked if you didn't. Ryan, let's jump in for a second. Let's just talk about the issue, right? Like, labor shortages abound in every industry that I'm aware of. What would you say is what's causing it for service-based industries right now? How come it's so hard to find people?
It's an incredible topic, Dave. And unfortunately, it's one of those issues there's not some magic wand that we can wave over one issue and fix it, but it's definitely multifaceted. The top three that really come to mind, number one is, I've worked with a lot of really small businesses, restaurant owners, service-based companies, contractors. They're faced with really some opposing winds in their face. Number one is, for the last how many decades, we've been talking about people need to go to get a 4-year degree and look at that kind of higher job title, right? We've kind of pushed away the trades as a quality employment opportunity. So you've got that in your face, because there's a lot of millennials right now coming to the labor market, and you've seen it dissipating the percentage of people entering the labor market that are going into the trades. So that's opposition number one. Number two is you have growth in that space. So not only are people not coming in, you're expanding the market. There's more apartments, there's more homes, there's more commercial businesses that need to be serviced than ever before. And then you've got a high volume of people that have taken retirement, or, you got these boomers that are all kind of the top of their career path. You have over 1 million people a day right now that are entering retirement. I mean, it's a massive shift. And so a lot of your experienced employees, technicians, even trades owners are starting to leave the marketplace. And so you got kind of like 3 pressure points that really are setting up this impact. I know a lot of us want to put blame on COVID. I think that's too easy to do. COVID's definitely a telling part, but a lot of the trades didn't shut down during COVID. They kept going. That may play a part of it too. I mean, people didn't want to keep working during COVID. They wanted the time off like all their friends did, and they didn't get it. But I think all things being equal right now, I don't think that's as much of an influence as people want to give it.
Yeah, I because we work so much with the service industries and the trades, a lot of our clients, they had depending on the state, but most of them had a slowdown, shutdown for about 3 weeks, end of March to early April. And then some of them still had record months in April because
Yeah.
people at home, the HVAC guys went through the roof. I've got partners at Thumbtack and Angie Leads and people like that shared data with me and said, hey, by the way, this is what's actually happening with our lead flow right now. And some of them were up 200% during the COVID recession, as far as the amount of labor that they had the amount of inquiries they had for HVAC, plumbing were way up, painting was way up, roofing was way up, because people are like, my house leaks. I'm home all day now. Like, it smells funny in here. Like, it was pretty intense. So I can definitely second that. But that's created more demand for home services, for sure, in certain categories. I've got a question for you, and I don't want to mince it too much, but I do also personally observe and hear a lot of complaints about the new generation of workers and kind of what their expectations are. How do you think that applies into like the trades and the service industry, where it might be perceived as being a little bit harder work than sitting at a desk and being on a keyboard?
I'm probably not the best when I answer that. I sit behind a keyboard all day. So,
Yeah.
but there's definitely a trend. The conversations happen every day between me and my customers. There's a softness to the labor market that's coming in, right? And that willingness to roll up your sleeves and just get the work done. Or, I'm working with a guy today, whose employees quit because they weren't comfortable working overtime going into the summer months, and he's losing his mind. He goes, I need them to work overtime. This is not a new concept.
Yeah.
When we're going into busy season, and he and employees are like, no, I don't do overtime. See you later.
Yeah.
You're definitely in a tough spot. I like to circle back to some data. I love data, and I think data helps, whether it's always accurate or not, it helps us give it a trajectory, kind of what's happening. And so you're seeing a lot of data coming out of Deloitte. They did some analysis on people entering the workforce over the last 36 months.
Yeah.
What we found is like the number one pressures, like the biggest things that they're looking for when accepting a job offer. So assuming basic needs are met, meaning the compensation met their expenses, what's most important to them when accepting a job opportunity. And the number one thing was growth. And so I question a lot of service and small businesses. They have a hard time recruiting, and they think it's because of money. It's not. I think a lot of these new generation candidates see small businesses as limited growth potential.
Mm-hmm.
And we may laugh at that, but if you think about it, in their mind, they see Amazon, they see Apple, they see Facebook, they see this opportunity to grow into a company and have shares of a business and stock offerings and grow in by title. Your title's changing every 6 months. For them, that's success. That's what it's bred to look like. Mm-hmm. So my question would be my rhetorical question back to folks listening to this would be, what are you doing to present growth opportunities at the very first touch point with a candidate? Mm-hmm. So when you're promoting an opportunity with your company, spell out these attributes that they're mentioning in this data. The other one is flexibility. That might be a little bit difficult. So opportunity for growth, workplace flexibility, strong leadership came in the top 5. Yeah. Basically, if you analyze the top 13, none of them had to do with money.
Yeah.
They were all kind of these social components of trust in the workplace, constant feedback by mid-level management, mm-hmm. Reinforcing my core values, shared purpose. Mm-hmm. Like those are all those buzzwords, but it really starts with, how do you tell that story when looking for work?
Mm-hmm. I find it's interesting because several years ago, I was working, helping to lead a translation company. and we had this kind of these younger generation folks that were working in marketing. So I guess I've hit that age differential now where like I don't see eye to eye with them, but I still respect them and I think it's cool. But we had a guy that was legitimately like a van camper. He was like 20, and that's what he did. Like he was like he had this whole following on the van life type platform, and he was blogging about and he lived to be in his van with his dog and to be in some remote place every weekend and every Thursday if possible, right? And Friday, right? That was why he worked. His why was I want to go do whatever the heck I want to do. That was the
Yeah.
first time I started to realize, oh, something's different here. Like I grew up in rural Illinois, farm town America. We all worked hard because working hard was part of our core values
Yeah.
and as I got older, like I'm kind of like the switch point between Gen X and millennial, but like I think more like a Gen Xer in that I'm like, well, career is important and I want to make good money and I want to have the means to do whatever I want to do. Where I've noticed the same thing, a lot of the same things that the newer folks coming in, they're like, well, they're interested in the organization's mission and they want to have fulfillment on more of a metaphysical rather than a tangible level with the organization. They want to make a difference. There are a lot of B Corps do really well with the younger generation because they're like, no, what we're doing is we're taking llama wool and we're making a sustainable backpack. I think of like Cotopaxi, like appeals
Sure.
very strongly to like this new kind of millennial mindset, which isn't bad, but it doesn't align. If I'm a 50-year-old hardworking HVAC guy, I have a hard time identifying with this crowd and attracting them. So I guess I'll stop monologuing, but let's get to like the next topic that we should be discussing, which is so then what? Like how do thought leaders, how do intelligent business owners pivot a little bit and change how they're approaching the labor market so they can attract and retain better employees, given that these things have changed underneath us?
Well, I think we have to approach it differently in the sense that look at what's not working. The stickers on the back of the truck saying we're hiring don't work. There's no, I mean, what else is new? Everyone's got now hiring. Craigslist ads aren't working.
MySpace.
Posting, MySpace still isn't working. Posting on Facebook to your friends, hey, we're hiring again, might be interesting, but not dependable. So I think it's really interesting about like, how do you tackle this? I mean, the easy answer is to always be recruiting. And you're looking, especially if you're in kind of that services industry, is maybe looking for labor that you can train up. A lot of people love, speaking recently with you, Dave, kind of at the PCA event, Painting Contractors Group, is a lot of them have found folks in hospitality and in like restaurant servers, they actually turn out to be really great employees. Their client-facing approach is phenomenal. Their attention to detail and willingness to please is really high. But a lot of them aren't, in the restaurant industry because that's what they were, raised to want to be. And they did it to satisfy kind of a need, make a little money. So approaching them with an opportunity to not only make more money, but for training and willingness to grow, it goes a long ways. A unique approach in the HVAC space. I don't recommend everybody do this, but I think it was very, interesting. In a tight labor market, they knew who the top HVAC installers were in the community. So they started sending out $100 Venmos to every HVAC technician in a list that they could find and saying, here, go to dinner on me. We care about our employees. We'd love to you be an employee in the future. Let me know how dinner goes and if we can chat next week. They landed almost 100% interviews from that campaign.
Wow.
Now, if you're spending several $100s a month on Indeed, the Venmo approach might be worth it. It breaks through the noise very quickly, and those folks aren't actively looking for jobs; they're passive job seekers. So I think getting creative in how do you tackle the passive talent pool?
Yeah, I think was it in that channel? I think it was when we were doing the discussion on stage at PCA maybe it was Morgan. So what somebody else brought up for painters, they were going to Sherwin-Williams and hanging out, and then meeting people as a business owner. They were meeting people between X hours and X hours at Sherwin-Williams, introducing herself, saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about coming to work for us," and use that as kind of the channel through which she spent physical time and built personal relationships with people, and then started to recruit some of the folks that were just coming in to buy paint for the next job, or they were down a couple rollers, so they came in to buy some materials, and then met the founder of a company and was intrigued with a new job opportunity. And somebody else was talking about Home Depot too. These might have been side conversations I had. Am I remembering this right, or was this not during our panel discussion?
I've heard a couple of those. I don't remember the exact context, so you might be right, but I think that's the right frame of mind. Is be where your ideal talent will be. Be omnipresent. Find a way to get in front of them. Is a very powerful way to tell your story, build a relationship, establish some trust early on. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I'll add one more note onto this, just because I've had this discussion with a lot of my clients. Some of the best employees that you can reach out to, or at least prospective employees, are also people that have applied for jobs with you in the past, or have maybe worked with you and left and then thought they had greener pastures somewhere else. I've had several clients that have tried out, they go to their old previous labor pool or labor applicants, and essentially, like a bunch of old leads, they'll nurture them, reach back out, let them know they're hiring, and start promoting a new job opening and some growth potential to people who said they were interested before. A lot of them, one of the folks I worked with said that in one of their bigger cities they did this, and they had 27 applicants within the first couple of days of reaching out to them. I think everyone would be thrilled to have 27 applicants for any job that were qualified at this point.
I can't tell you how powerful that is. I'm seeing companies that know how to build a bench of qualified talent with the understanding I may only hire one person this month, but I treat every qualified candidate as a potential employee for the future. And so they use tools like Client Tether, or they'll build their own mechanism to where they can keep the conversation moving forward.
Yeah.
And sometimes that doesn't have to be like, oh, we're going to set up a Zoom call. It's just a matter of an invitation to our company barbecue next Thursday. If you can make it, great. If not, we'll catch you next month. Get them involved with your brand. I can't tell you how the best companies know how to nurture talent pool better than anyone else. If the labor market's tight now, I hate to break it to you, it's not going to be better in 12 months from now. It won't.
Yeah.
And so it starts now, building a bench and nurturing. It sets a tone to your current employee base as well, knowing there's a waiting list. What does that tell them indirectly when they know there's a waiting list? Maybe even publish it. Here's our bench of qualified technicians, and you got on a whiteboard. They see that, they know it. And I think indirectly it's telling them, like, this is an ideal place to work, and I'm lucky to be here.
That's pretty cool. Actually, I haven't thought about it that way, but it's the same process people use to generate revenue, right? You have a pipeline of deals that you're working and nurturing, and they'll start to come in. But if you're not thinking about your labor in the same way, then you're missing a window. That barbecue idea is genius. I love that. Why not? Why, especially local market labor, right? For me, that doesn't work because we're remote everywhere. But have you seen anything like that for remote workers? Because some people do have satellite offices, or people that can work 100% remote. What have you seen that works for folks like that to get creative with their recruiting?
That's really interesting. I have seen a few kind of outlier instances where I thought, oh, that's brilliant. I know that there's a company that once a month will find a comedian, and they'll do kind of like a happy hour on Thursday nights, and they'll do a Zoom call, and they have comedians do these virtual comedy sets. There's comedians all over that are do anything for a buck, right? And they'll get in and they'll create a dialogue, a little bit of they'll do some polling, they'll do just trying to do something interactive. Everyone kind of brings their beverage of choice. They're hanging out. They got a comedian kind of doing a set, having a conversation. Again, there's no additional cost. Bring in some of your prospects to join the conversation, come hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, love that. I mean, that I can see that apply in all sorts of different ways. Thanks for that hot tip.
The other is I just had a conversation last week with a gentleman who pays for the Financial Peace University, kind of the Dave Ramsey courses for all their employees. And once a month, they'll find a financial planner, a CPA, someone to come in and talk virtually on Zoom about a specific topic. How do you leverage your 401k in today's market? Is crypto the next big thing? Are you buying? Are you holding? What percentage of your portfolio should you have exposed to it? How much money should you have saved up now to plan for your retirement if you're 35 years old? Giving that extra courtesy back to your employee base tells a lot to your employees that it's not just about the job, that there's purpose behind it. Again, another great way to just invite in your bench. Let them come participate and be involved in that.
Yeah, and it makes your employees, your staff, your partners in building your business so much more engaged when they feel like you're investing in them. I love that. You're answering some questions I've had bouncing around in my head for a while, Ryan, about what else, right? What else can I do?
Yeah.
What else can I do for them? Sometimes it's not, I don't have an extra pile of cash to throw at people. And if I did, I would, but can we leverage our standing as a business to bring in talent, to train, show people, some investment strategies. Crypto is huge right now. What are we doing about it? I have an 18-year-old that's investing in crypto right now. Every time he gets money, he's like putting it in his Coinbase account, and he's like, Dad, all of my crypto's up right now. Check this out. I'm like, good for you. That's like $100, but that's amazing that you're thinking about that. And the generation cares about that because they've seen these stories of people that go, that I had no joke, had somebody approach me 8 years ago, like, hey, Dave, you should spend some of your money on Ethereum. And I was like, you're smoking crack, man. He's a younger guy, but he'd been researching. He's like, no, this is a thing. And I think it was like $15 a share or like a coin at that point. And I was like, stupid. How do I access it? I can't liquefy it. Like, this is a dumb asset. I'm not going to do it. And now I was telling my son that. He's like, Dad, no way. You missed. Why didn't you buy it? I was like, because it wasn't a thing. Like, I didn't really know much about it at the time. But I mean, if I would have been a little more educated, I might have thrown some money in it. And that would have could have paid for my kids' college from Ethereum growth. It's crazy.
I actually fired an employee in 2013 because he was using our extra server at our office to mine Bitcoin. And I don't even know how to think about that now. I got rid of the server. I don't even know if there was like a digital wallet on there. The ideas are just rambling in my head because he had been doing it. He admitted to me he'd been doing it for almost a year. He'd been running the server at nights when we were out of office, and he'd partitioned it to mine for Bitcoin. And I have no idea what that could have been if I'd only just trusted him, maybe, instead of jumping to conclusions.
You could be like, all right, let's talk about this. And how's it going? And like, all these things are hindsight 2020, right? But man, the crazy thing is his net worth is probably like 10x yours and mine right now. That's what he's doing with that. I love it. That's funny. Well, let's talk a little bit about converting, because attracting is one thing, but then there's more I think that we need to be doing in the process of converting attracted talent or prospective employees into hires. Walk us through, because this is, I think, where you're part of what you do as a software company. You really excel at this, right? Okay, I've gotten them in. Now what do I do? What are some tips, some things you think business owners should be thinking about in that regard?
Well, timeliness is key. In a tight labor market, you should not go 24 hours without touching base to a qualified candidate. You can't. They will be hired very, very quickly. There's opportunities to tell a culture story within the hiring process. So at Viva HR, we actually have culture profiles. It's a trademark thing, culture marketing, where you tell your culture story in the job posting with videos and photos. You can do that any way you want. You can build quick squeeze pages, landing pages. You can even use, a Google form as part of your application where you layer in photos and videos into the Google form where they fill out. So they get a sense of who you are as a company, not just here's bullet points. One of the biggest things I've seen that really impact conversion rate is stop thinking of it as what you're going to do for me in the job description. Here's the roles and responsibilities. Here's a bunch of bullet points, and all of them are one-sided. What you are going to do for me. Instead, flip the script. Start it off with, here's who we are as a company. Here's our vision as a company. And here's what we're going to do for you. And then next, what you're going to do for me. And then what we can accomplish together. And you change the dialogue. And again, when we go back to the beginning of this conversation, we really started with, what do they care about? What do candidates care about before accepting a job offer? They care about growth opportunity, growth mindset. So presenting that to them about what we can accomplish together and what that growth plan looks like dramatically changes. They now remember you. When you call them for an interview, oh, I loved your job description. It was different. It wasn't just another template that somebody had copied and pasted and put on there. It was unique. It was thoughtful. They noticed that. And I think that's the kind of stuff that stands out that helps you get A players. Stop hiring C players. You might be desperate, but the quickest way to drive A players that you currently have out of your organization is hiring a bunch of C players. Yeah. So you've got to set a standard of expectations right out the gate.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I'm scribbling a lot of notes down on this one because I'm thinking about even ways we can improve our employee attraction and hiring processes too. And it's true. We had a gal who we just extended a job to. She was awesome. She was really excited about it, and she ended up, as we'd set her start date, she ended up grabbing another job. And everybody, and this happened pretty quick, right? So with it, everyone they'd been interviewing within the last 5 days, they were all hired. It was a tech role as well, which doesn't help, right? Because quite a bit of shortage in that. Yeah. But man, like back in the good old days, you could have gone back to your top 3 after that person walked away, and then and then pushed 3 of those, 2 to 3 of those people into an employment opportunity. They were gone fast. Like that shocked me. There's also an issue with people not showing up for interviews, which is I've never experienced that in my life, but that was during the benefits package extension from the government. So I think a lot of it was Netflix funding. That's what I like to call it. So that seems to have mellowed out though. Yeah. People if they're applying, they're showing up for interviews more than they were before. But yeah, that's interesting.
Every industry is impacted. You're right though, because right now we have the highest inverted gap ever recorded in the history of the labor market, where we have over 5 million open job positions more than active employment opportunity, labor pool actively looking for work. That's massive.
And it also, Adam's invisible hand, right? Supply and demand. What happens? The price goes up, which means wages are climbing. Which is something we also have to pay attention to, right? I mean, you'd mentioned it early on. As long like there's a certain threshold people need to hit to be satisfied, so you got to make sure you're paying attention to that, because I know some folks and where they've said, yeah, well, I can afford this right now, and this that they can afford for the job posting is well below the industry threshold. You're not going to get any A players looking for that job unless somehow you create some interesting culture story that attracts people that don't care about money very much, which can help. It can happen, but there's a certain threshold. You got to pay attention to that, because wages are increasing pretty quickly across the board right now.
100%. Yeah, agree.
Well, share with me. I know we're winding down. We got just a few minutes left, but talk to me about some best practices in employee retention. So we've talked about how do we attract, then how do we optimize conversion of applicants into hires, but now let's talk about retaining employees, because that's, I'd say, the third leg of the stool. If you're not retaining them but you're hiring them well, it's the same problem in the end. What are some good retention tips?
All right. So, I mean, let's go back to the very beginning. It's going to be like a broken record here, but people want to see growth. I mean, there's a survey recently done, gosh dang, and I can't remember exactly who did it. I hate citing without citing sources. Anyway, the results of this were people feel there's a higher percentage of people that feel more comfortable finding a new job than asking their current employer for a raise. Because of the awkwardness. They feel uncomfortable asking for a raise. Now, if you're a great employer, you're not dealing with that. And the reason why is I think the best companies use an EOS framework or scaling up framework where they're doing continual employee scorecards. I know for me as an entrepreneur, I think it was about 5 years ago, I implemented scorecards. But I was scared. I was scared to do my first scorecard. I remember I'd been an entrepreneur for several years, and to sit down with an employee and like basically tell them what they're doing wrong. A great employee, I was scared I was going to lose him as an employee. He thanked me and we hugged at the end. And he said, "This means a lot to me that you care enough to help me want to be better." And it totally changed my mindset going forward. Now, I could be scarred if it had gone the other direction. But the point is, I think the biggest way you can improve your retention is increased dialogue. How can you increase more conversations? If the guy waiting for your employees at the paint store has better conversations with your employees than you do, you're not going to keep them very long.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think in addition to let's talk about mindset of younger employees. They've grown up in an environment that's very non-controversial, non-confrontational.
Yes.
Everyone's getting pats on the back for having their shoes tied, even if they don't do it right. Like it's kind of the stigma that a lot of the older folks put on the younger generation. Not necessarily wrong, but maybe inflated a little bit. But at the same time, they do thrive on feedback, and mostly positive feedback. And so if you're used to an older style of communication where you don't talk to each other unless you need something, I can see a lot of folks, especially in the service industry, leaning that way and having a really hard time connecting with their employees because they're not saying, "Hey, Steve, you did a great job." Giving earnest praise and feedback, I think, is important to this generation, but it also needs to be earnest, not falsified, fake, because they can see through that as well as you and I can.
Well, I think the power of a scorecard is you're not the bad guy. The power of the scorecard is you have critical, measurable output that's measured quantitatively. There's no lie behind it. There's no malice. There's no opinions. It's fact. And then you as the boss are now putting your arm around their shoulders, and together you're loving them up. You're serving them to say, "I notice this is a little low. What can I do to help you? Here, let's work together. I'm supporting, I'm serving." That dialogue is completely different than, "Bro, get your act together. This sucks." Right? Like there's an entirely different approach. And I think that empathetic leadership is dramatically the difference with this new generation that they care about and they'll be very loyal about as well. I think a lot of people give millennials a bad rap for being this kind of soft generation. They're actually a very, very loyal generation as well. When they buy into something, they're extremely passionate and loyal behind it. So generating that empathetic approach also builds a strong degree of loyalty.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing, especially if they find there's alignment around their purpose and yours. But if you don't know how to articulate your purpose, let's say I'm a painter, right? I'm painting homes. It's pretty, I think, difficult for some folks to come up with a purpose statement that would be interesting for other people, right? But if you have a purpose behind your business of training up and employing young people so that they can do X, Y, Z, like if you can just come up with a way to create a purpose for your business that's real, right? Maybe you have a bit of a foundation approach to your business where you'll repaint and restore one widow's home every quarter as a business, like something like that, and really delivering on it creates a very different approach to your company and gives a lot of the younger folks something they can say, "I love what I do. We just helped Mrs. White completely redo the exterior of her home, and it looks like $1 million and she didn't have to pay a penny for it. Like those sorts of things, profit with a purpose, I find drive a lot of that home with the younger generation.
100%. That was great.
Yeah. Ryan, I really do appreciate you. Do you mind? I'll put you on the spot. Maybe could you summarize the 3 of the points that you feel were maybe the most valuable that people should absolutely not forget from listening to this podcast?
Yeah, you bet. I think the number one is treat new prospects kind of with intention. Intentionally try and build the best candidate experience possible. CX. What does your candidate experience look like to come into your company? I think the second one is cultivate a culture of communication inside your organization, of a quality feedback loop that let them know that you care about them, love them, support them. And then I think the third big takeaway is nurture. You've got a prospect pool. Maybe you only hired one. There was 10 great prospects. Get them involved in your company. Always think about them and invite them to activities. Have a reason to communicate and nurture them, and you will have a quality bench ready to fill open positions.
Yeah, I love that. As a baseball coach, I've had the experience to coach a lot of different boys over the years, but I've had pretty competitive teams, and part of that comes from here's my summer league pool, here's some kids I know from the high school team here. Now I help coach another high school. Like when it comes to 18U baseball this fall, I had a pretty deep bench to pull from and say, hey, I got some alternates. I want to pull these guys in here. I'm not going to ask these guys to come back because they didn't perform, but I had lots of options to pull from. Made a huge difference on our team performance, but in the business, even more, I'd say important, right? Longer lasting,
Absolutely.
more impact on families. So Ryan, you're a rock star. For letting me steal you and dedicating some of your times to give us some tips that will help. I appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you.